Hello, and welcome to our program on Section 504 Accessibility Measuring. In today's program, our survey team will take you through the basic steps of how to measure effectively when surveying for compliance with Section 504 accessibility requirements. HUD is responsible for enforcing and effectuating compliance with several laws requiring that housing is made accessible to and usable by individuals with disabilities. Today's program will focus exclusively on Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973's requirements for physical accessibility in housing. Section 504 requires that at least 5% of federally funded housing is fully accessible for individuals with mobility impairments, and that an additional 2% of units are accessible for persons with hearing or vision impairments. Section 504 applies only to recipients of federal financial assistance. This program will only look at some of the requirements for accessibility for individuals with mobility impairments. HUD regulation implementing Section 504 can be found at 24 CFR Part 8 and Part 40. HUD FHEO's UFAS checklist and website for UFAS can be seen here on the screen. While the statutory and regulatory requirements can be found in 29 U.S.C. 794 and 24 CFR Part 8, the technical scoping provisions or the standards for designing, constructing, and altering buildings so that an individual with a physical disability has ready access to and use of a dwelling unit is found in the Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards, more commonly referred to as UFAS. These standards serve as the backdrop for the measurements that we take to determine whether a dwelling unit is accessible and complies with the uniform standard. UFAS is also the basis for our checklist tool. When we go out to measure various elements of a dwelling unit, we are looking to see if the minimum requirements for access are being met and complied with. While it might seem that being particular about a measurement being off by 1/4 of an inch is no big deal, it actually can mean the difference between whether or not an individual with a physical disability can enter a dwelling unit door using a wheelchair, for instance. When going on an accessibility survey, there are a few things you should have in the tool bag to help the survey go quickly and smoothly. Before we begin the actual survey, let's take a closer look at the 4 major items that you should always bring with you on your surveys. First is a tape measure. We have all seen and probably used a tape measure at some time. You need to purchase a heavy-duty tape measure like the one shown here, and make sure that the locking mechanism works to avoid any injuries. To properly use the measuring tape for survey, hold the front of the tape at the point you wish to start the measurement from, and extend it to the point where you want to stop and lock the tape in place. To find the inches, read the first large number before your stop point. This will tell you the number of inches. To locate a fraction of an inch, read the smaller lines of various sizes up until your stop point. This will tell you your fraction of an inch. On most full-size, 1-inch wide measuring tapes, the inches are broken down into fractions. Each line represents 1/16 of an inch, starting with the first one after any given number or the start of the tape. Next is the door pressure gauge. Most commercial gauges look like this one. It is designed to measure the pressure it takes to open a door with a closer. Remember, if there is no closer, you can keep the gauge in your bag. There are a couple of things you need to know about the pressure gauge. There are 2 scales on the gauge, pounds and kilograms. Always read from the pound scale. Set the top black O-ring located on the plunger rod to 0 down against the instrument's flange. Holding the instrument firmly, press slowly against the door at a point approximately handle high and 30 inches away from the door's hinges. Read the amount of force required to open the door on the pound scale closest to the bottom of the black O-ring. Take 2 different readings for any door pressure. record the measurement on the checklist, and note if there is a violation. Third is the SMART level. The most important thing to remember about the SMART level is that it is a sensitive measuring device and it needs to be calibrated before use as well as periodically during the day for the most accurate measurements. This is especially true if the level is dropped or jostled while in use. Always refer to the instructions that came with your SMART level for the proper calibration method. Once you have calibrated your SMART level, you are ready to go. Remember, all readings for survey purposes are done in percentages. Turn the level on and set the base of the level on the surface you wish to measure. Now take your measurement. The display will automatically show the angle in the digital window. And finally, we have a 60-inch round tablecloth. This may seem like an odd item to have in your bag, but the tablecloth will definitely make your job a lot easier when trying to measure a turning radius. The tablecloth is 60 inches round and can be placed in the open areas of the kitchen or bathroom to determine if a wheelchair has enough turning space to make a 180-degree turn. And remember, in addition to the 4 major items that I just discussed, you will also need a digital camera to take pictures of any potential findings, a copy of the Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards, UFAS, the UFAS checklist, a clipboard, and several good mechanical pencils. Now we will show you firsthand how these tools are used in accessibility measuring. We will start with the entrance to the unit by measuring the clear opening of the door. The clear door width for the entrance to the unit should be at least 32 inches. Keep in mind that we need to keep the measuring tape horizontal and measure between the face of the door to the opposite stop with the door open 90 degrees. As noted on the checklist, the clear door width for the entrance to the unit should be at least 32 inches. And as you can see here, the door width to this unit measures 32 7/8 inches. And that's what's entered on the checklist. Next, we are going to measure the pressure of an interior door using the door pressure gauge. Take the gauge and make sure the black O-ring is pushed against the instrument's flange, starting at 0. Open the door with the door open about 3 to 4 inches, and place the door pressure gauge on the door around the location of the door lever. Using the door pressure gauge, push the door open with a steady flow of pressure till it is opened approximately 90 degrees. Look at the door pressure gauge and record the pounds located at the bottom of the O-ring. To be sure you get an accurate reading, it's always a good idea to take the measurement again. For interior doors, the opening force should be no more than 5 pounds, and we see that the interior door pressure is 5 pounds. In surveying this unit, we will proceed from the front door, moving always in one direction. In this case, we move to the right. The first room that we will survey is the bathroom, starting with measuring the height of the side grab bar at the water closet, and then we will measure the space between the wall and the side grab bar. When measuring the height of the grab bar, measure from the finished floor to the center line of the grab bar. The center line of the grab bar should be mounted between 33 and 36 inches above the floor.
Is the center line of the grab bar mounted between 33 inches and 36 inches above the floor?
Let me check that out for you.
Okay.
35.5 inches.
Okay, thanks.
Now we'll measure the space between the wall and the grab bar.
Is the space between the grab bar and the wall 1.5 inches exactly?
Let me check that for you. It's 1.5 inches exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Next, we will measure the length of the grab bar.
Is the grab bar no more than 12 inches of the back wall?
Let me check for you. It's exactly 12 inches.
Okay, got it. And at least 42 inches long?
Let me check for you. It's exactly 42 inches.
Okay, thanks.
When measuring the length of the grab bar, It is important to remember to begin your measurement from the center of the flange of one end of the grab bar to the center of the flange of the other end of the grab bar. Many times while measuring the grab bars, the survey team has found that contractors install the grab bars incorrectly because they are measuring from either end of the flange, not from the center of the flange.
Now we will see if we have an unobstructed turning space of 60 inches in the bathroom. And as you can see, we do have an unobstructed turning space of 60 inches in the bathroom.
In addition to taking the measurement of the unobstructed turning space with a 60-inch round plastic tablecloth, you can also use a measuring tape. We will show you how to measure the unobstructed turning space using a measuring tape when we go into the kitchen. The survey team is now ready to survey the lavatory, or the sink. Because it is important to read the tape measure at eye level, you will find that you need to do a lot of bending down. So to minimize the amount of times that you are bending down to take a measurement, it is a good idea to take as many measurements as you can while you are holding the tape measure in place. For instance, when dealing with the height and knee clearance of the lavatory, you can take both of these measurements at the same time.
Is the top of the rim of the lavatory no more than 34 inches above the floor?
It's 34 inches.
Okay, and is the bottom of the apron at least 29 inches above the floor?
It's 30 inches.
The survey team is now ready to survey the kitchen. They will measure the width and knee clearance of the kitchen counter, the height of the kitchen counter, the height of the wall cabinet storage, and the unobstructed turning space.
Is there at least one 30-inch wide section of the counter with knee clearance?
All right, let me check that for you. I've got 36 inches wide.
And is there it at least 27 inches high?
It's 29 inches high.
Okay. And is the surface no more than 34 inches above the floor?
And the surface is 33.5 inches above the floor.
Okay, got it.
Moving on to the height of the wall cabinet, you want to make sure that the bottom shelf is no more than 48 inches above the floor. Because the wall cabinet is not as deep as the counter and bottom cabinet, there are two steps to measuring the height of the bottom shelf of the wall cabinet. Measure from the floor to the top of the counter, then measure from the top of the counter to the bottom shelf of the wall cabinet. Then add these two measurements together to get the height of the bottom shelf of the wall cabinet. The survey team will now measure the unobstructed turning space in the kitchen using a tape measure. To calculate the unobstructed turning space using a tape measure, extend the tape measure to approximately 90 inches, with 60 of those inches on the floor. Step on the tape measure at 30 inches. While keeping the tape measure at 60 inches, rotate the tape measure with your foot to measure a circle with a diameter of 60 inches. The survey team will now take the measurement of the width of the accessible route and the slope and cross slope of the ramp. You need to make sure that the minimum clear width of the accessible route is at least 36 inches. And as you can see, the minimum clear width of the accessible route is 74.5 inches. An accessible route includes all walks, halls, corridors, aisles, and any other space that connects an accessible unit with accessible buildings, facilities, elements, and spaces on the same site. An accessible route shall also be provided from public transportation stops, accessible parking, and sidewalks to the accessible building entrance they serve. However, an accessible route cannot include stairs. When measuring the slope, you want to make sure the slope is no more than 8.33%. And as you can see, the slope is 6.6%. You also want to check that the cross slope is no more than 2%. And the cross slope is 0.7%. That concludes our program on Section 504 accessibility measuring, and we hope that you have learned some of the basic steps for measuring effectively.